Well, happy Friday evening. Mm, At least that's what it's here on the East Coast. It's 8:03 p.m. over here in the United States on the East Coast. And wherever you all are, I hope you're having a good day or had a good day. And let's celebrate the evening together a little bit. I don't have a happy case, but then again, how many happy cases do we actually get to cover? Not many. They're all murder and assault and unsolved drama. Some of them involve children. This one is particularly upsetting because it goes all the way back to 2015 and it has been actually in the spotlight for quite some time now because we're going to be talking today about Stephen Smith. That name may be familiar with some of you who went through daily while Alex Murdaugh was on trial for the murder of his wife Maggie and his son Paul. This name was brought up a lot, not actually in the trial, but in the coverage. Whenever you say the name Murdaugh, several names come up. Not only the deaths of his wife and his son, but also the death of young Stephen Smith in 2015, just 15 miles from his home. Who knew both his sons? They were the same age as Stephen Smith was the same age as Buster. Buster went to school with both Stephen and his twin sister. Eh, you also hear the name Satterfield, the death of Gloria Satterfield. He's housekeeper, Alex Murdaugh's housekeeper for years, and how that suit all went. Now, that actually got mentioned a lot in the trial, so you know more about that. But lately, there's been a lot out here on Stephen Smith because recently they have changed their opinion on how he died, and they are listing it as an unsolved homicide at this point. There's an investigation going on. Now, there's not a lot that I can give you, although there's more than there usually is while an investigation is going on. Because what we do have is the original reports from 2015 when the police officers were there. And we do know what they thought at the time. We've got an autopsy report and a forensic pathologist who states that it's probably a hit and run, and we have everybody else disagreeing with her. She did not change her testimony. She did not even provide why she thought in that report it was a hit and run, except for one statement. The body was found in the middle of the road. Now, there are actual pictures available of Stephen's body in the road. They are blurred. I chose not to put them up today. As a matter of fact, to prevent myself from getting too graphic is what I'd say. I did not make a regular presentation like I do where the slideshow comes up, but I have the documents and I'm going to link them for you and I'm going to show some of them because they include some drawings, they include statements actually from the South Carolina Highway Patrol, which were the first on the scenes. There's also a copy of a letter that Sandy Smith sent to the FBI in 2016. Sandy Smith has been very vocal into the giving out the names of the people who actually contacted her when her son first died, talking about what happened in those first couple of days, talking what's happened all along, new information coming forward. This case gets to be murky, to say the least. And some things are going to come out where it's going to sound like you're going against the victim, but you're actually not. I just want to be very clear here. Uh, the important part about looking at something that's unsolved, that isn't even a criminal case yet, there are no legal filings as of this time, is to look at all of it. Okay, so please, let's not try to attack some of the people coming out and giving additional information because I assure you, in an unsolved, they need all the information. They need all of the information. Now, Stephen was a nursing student. He was looking forward to completing his studies. He was also openly gay. He also had a little black book, and he also offered on Craigslist his services. He had quite a few people in his life that could be suspects. There was a lot going on. There is a gentleman from Facebook called Burkhart who says he was in a serious relationship with Stephen at the time, and they were contemplating getting married. That statement's been hotly contested by Stephen's family, especially his sister, because she says that Stephen was not in the frame of mind in a serious relationship and that this person was making more of what was going on before them than it is. Okay. And, you know, I think the twin sister may know because the twin sister and he had a relationship and he shared many things with her. Um, but who's to say? Unfortunately, Stephen is not with us anymore to tell us. Okay. Um, in that morning in July in 2015, Stephen was found on a rural road. It was the early morning hours of July 8th, and it was dark, you know. They do believe that what happened to him happened between 1 and 4 a.m. in the morning. Um, he's he was found in the middle of the road about 3 miles away from where his car had run out of gas. Um, it's said to report that there were deep gashes in his forehead. There was blood on his arm, blood on his hands. The initial reports state this is from the highway patrol officers, okay? This is from first on the scene. What they could see was a large amount of blood coming from his head. He was laying on the wall. It doesn't look like any distress anywhere else on his body. His arm had some blood on it. His forehead looked to be marked. There looked to be, in one report, it says to be a hole, like a projectile wound, in near his eye above on his forehead. And then there is also from the officers reporting, it looks like blunt head trauma. It looks like he was hit in the head by something or a projectile, but it looks like that is where all the blood is coming from, and that was the manner of death. What's noted in those reports, though, that is even more clear, is that no officer arriving on the scene saw any accident debris of any type, saw any skid marks of any type. Okay. That Stephen's shoes were still on his feet. The way the body is laying in the road, it looks like he'd been just struck and fell to the ground. Now, that would be kind of difficult to hit him just in the head with a moving vehicle. The coroner contests the pathology report that says after autopsy that he probably died from a person versus vehicle incident. That he did die of blunt head trauma, that there was a wound to the head, and he died from that. And there's nothing else on his body. There was not a lot. It says that under special microscope during the testing, you know, there were traces of some kind of blue metallic paint of some type. But there's not like any evidence of chips or anything like that. There are on the shoes, on the bottom of the shoes, of course, but that could be from the road. Um, his shirt and his khakis were tested clean. There's no evidence of the body being struck by a vehicle if he was walking on the side of the road. His sister contests that Stephen walked the sides of these country roads a lot, and she often walked with him in the middle of the night, dead middle of the night, and that they knew anytime a car came by, they would run into the woods. They never wanted to be seen on the side of the road. She does not believe that Stephen would have left himself open to be seen on the side of the road and be hit by a car. That he was a little more smarter than that, so to speak. Okay. His mother, Sandy, contests the same. If you read these reports, and yeah, I'm gonna give you all of them that I can. Okay, this first one, if someone could please check that this link opens. I want to make sure that you have a good link for a PDF of the South Carolina Highway Patrol's multidisciplinary accident investigation team, and that means everybody that was involved. This is an ongoing document. Okay, hold on. I'll get you a better one then. Thank you for checking, Beck. Okay. When we look at the document, it's 110 pages, so don't get too scared. you know. Um what 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 I want to make sure is that everybody's going to be able to share this as it gets updated. So let me just make it okay. All right. Try this one because this one says shared with anybody that has the link. So if you save that link as things get updated, you should be able to see it. Yep, that's what I did, Harold. Yeah, it's what I was doing. I had opened it the wrong way. I just opened it as a full PDF for myself for the screen. Well, now that one should be shareable. If yeah, thank you. Yep. All right. So basically, now there's a lot of detail there that I'm not going to go over a whole 110 pages, but I just want to key you in on some of the key information here. First of all, the officers on the scene first did not believe a vehicle was involved in this incident. There's no skid marks, there's no other evidence, there's nothing. The body's in the middle of the road, either been struck there or placed there. Okay. Large pool of blood. There are pictures available to you online. They will show him laying there in the just flat out on his back in a crumpled like state, one leg up, shoes intact on his feet. Now, if you're struck by a vehicle, these officers themselves made statements to say it's very unlikely if it was a hit and run that the body would have been presented that way, that the shoes would have still been on his feet, especially since they were untied. They were loose. It was very loose fitting shoes. And the way the legs were casually there, they did not believe that the body had been struck by a vehicle. They did not see any other outward witness. There were statements that he was beaten by people. There were statements, people called in and gave so many crazy kind of statements. Like Anna is saying in the chat, there were statements made that he was beat to death. The body was not in a beaten condition. Okay, that's been evident. That's evident by every picture that comes forward. It's also evident by what they absolutely agree in regards to the autopsy that the body was not beaten. Okay, except for that there was blunt head trauma. Now, there are several different stories that are going around from the beginning. There is evidence of a person, and I'm not going to name names of people that are giving testimony. Some of it's redacted, some of it's not. But at this point, it's so much a he said, she said. Nothing's actually been put into evidence into a court case as to viable or not, or where prosecution or defense would be going with the names. They've been looking for people. There was a father that came forward that said his stepson, uh, could have been part of it. That someone had come forward to him. His son had told him that he and his friend were there and they witnessed someone hit him with bat, which could cause blunt head trauma. That it was part of something that they were all doing together. They were all going around and destroying mailboxes, something that happens even here in New Jersey. They're driving around in the rural areas with a bat out of the car, and they're swinging at the roadside mailboxes to destroy them. Called mailboxing, bored people, something to do. Stephen, obviously not being a mailbox, but may have come upon them during this. They may have saw him while he was walking to get gas for his car. Uh, it also is strange that if he was leaving his car 3 miles away, why would he leave his wallet and everything inside of it and the gas cap open? It does look like he was uh, came upon at the car or right near the car and perhaps moved, and perhaps something happened a couple miles away. His body was found 3 miles away from where his car was on Sandy Run Road. Um, to me, that doesn't make much sense. I can't imagine walking to get gas without my wallet and my ID, leaving my car open on the side of the road. But, I'm not from that area. I don't know how safe it is and how comfortable people are doing stuff like that. Well, it did seem odd to the officers too, because they made note of it. They made note of it as another reason why they don't think that he was just walking that far away and then just hit by a car. Everyone agrees that the case should be solved and that Sandy Smith deserves to know what happened to her son. Sandy Smith and her husband are not together, or Stephen's father are not together. Well, Stephen's father has made reports that he received a call from Randy Murdaugh right after being notified by SLED that is by the not SLED but the highway patrol rather, that his son's body was found. Well, there's a lot of questions as to how Randy Murdaugh knew about everything at the same time as the family did. And Randy Murdaugh, at the time, it's been reported, he was working on a workman's comp case with Stephen Smith's father, for Stephen Smith's father, and that he called him in not only to console him in regards to what was going on, but to offer his services if they should be needed. I'm wondering how he knew, and why would the services be needed for a hit and run? But then again, it is a wrongful death, and I understand that lawyers think a different way than we do. Well, to me, it just stands out. It stands out a lot because although all the officers thought it was not a hit and run, and it looked like a wrongful death from the start, it looked like he was injured, he was hit. No investigation went forward very seriously afterwards. Many people spread rumors that they thought the Murdaugh boys were involved. There were rumors that Buster and Stephen were in a relationship, which Buster has come out and hotly said absolutely not. He has even put out a statement after his father's verdict came in. Of all, he was really getting a lot of pressure in regards to the rumors on this, and he says he has nothing to do with it. There were many phone calls. There's many affidavits and investigations and interviews where the name came up. I counted at least 20 times where Buster Murdaugh's name came up in regards to statements that Sandy Smith made and several others. Now, Sandy Smith also fired a lawyer, Andy Savage, in 2021 because he made the statement that he didn't think the Murdaughs were involved at all. She was so upset by that statement, she got another lawyer. There's a lot of pressure from the family thinking the Murdaughs are involved. And I understand because they keep hearing the name over and over and over again. They know that they were a family of a certain reputation. They also know their son. They also know they may have been feeling a certain way about rumors tying Stephen and Buster together. Stephen, again, was openly gay, and it was not actually accepted by many people in that community. Stephen had his lifestyle, and we're not judging him on it at all. But it is part of the case because of how people felt about it. there were a lot of people against. Okay. And so in a small town like this, with one big powerful family, rumors are running and running amok. And hello there, Pete Hutchins. Nice to see you. Hello, Aunt Jer. I can see so many people coming in. I'm sorry I didn't get to greet you all individually. I'm kind of just taking care of business a little bit. Skits Crasher, Ox, good to see you also. Hey, Tony, it's very nice to see you. And hey, Beck, thanks for checking the links, guys. I'm glad it works. Okay. I'll try to make sure that the one for the mom's letter works also. There was in the documentary, let me just answer this for Harold here. I swear I have heard about this case somewhere. There's been a documentary about it on Netflix or any other TV. Every Murdaugh documentary mentions Stephen Smith. There is both in Low Country and I believe in the one on Netflix that just happened. Am I correct, Pete? I believe so. There is a section on it. Okay. Um, there are documentaries all over in regards to it. Stephen Smith's been talked about as long as we've been talking about Alex Murdaugh. It keeps coming up because it's not solved, because it happened in 2015. It was 15 miles from the Moselle Ranch. Okay. Um, but it's definitely try the Low Country one. They did a whole section on Stephen Smith. Yep, and the Murdaugh murders also from Netflix, Harold. And I'm sure if Mrs. Harold is watching on it, she may know a lot about it. Just ask her. I bet you she got lots to tell you about it. Because if you like true crime, this is one of the ones that's going to stick out, at least currently. Anyway, okay. Let me see. Answer, destroying mailboxes is a terrible crime, actually, and I don't know why these kids do it, but it's a big, big problem. We've got a rural area here in central Jersey, and some of the mailboxes are on the street. And yeah, they used to go around destroying them. In most areas now, people actually brick them in. It's not unusual to have them at the end of your job, a whole brick type construction going on for your mailbox because you couldn't just have a pole in a mailbox anymore because they got destroyed so often. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Just look at a few things to see what questions are coming up. Yep. Always correct. Yep. It was down by the side of the seat. And also, yes, thank you for reminding me, always grateful. When I said that Stephen Smith had his ID and everything in the car, I failed to specifically state his cell phone was in there. Now, this was 2015, a 19-year-old young man. Would he be walking 3 miles away from his car without his cell phone to go get gas? I don't think so. I mean, that to me stands out the most. To me, it means two things. He was either abducted from his car while he was out there, checking on the gas and this and figuring out what to do, or he knew who they were and they offered him a ride to go get gas, and he just quickly like jumped in, or they pulled him in. Okay. Another thing is, what if they like grabbed him and just kept driving down the road while they were talking to him? I've seen that in movies where they lift them off the ground and hold you up and just drive you away. That too. But it doesn't appear that he was struck there. Believe me, at the car, there is no blood. There is no sign of any type of struggle or any shenanigans going on. That's also like very confusing. There's nothing really at the scene of the car 3 miles from where they found the body that indicates that anything happened there. Yep, 3 miles from his car on Sandy Run. That's where he was found always. I'm not sure, Tony. Tony is saying that he can't remember when, but he heard or read and seemed to remember something about Stephen calling Buster for a ride when he ran out of gas. That is something that is not been documented in anything that I read so far. But if anybody does read it in any of the interview reports, please highlight me to page or number. I'm not through every single page of it yet. Um, but from what I've seen, I don't see anything like that. Although I did see it in an article, someone mentioning it. There have been so many calls to the police station, so many pieces of information given in, everybody saying it, so many people indicating the Buster Murdaugh in particular, but not really saying why. Except for one young man who says he was there with his friend and Buster, and that his friend is the one who hit Stephen Smith in the head with a bat. But it's not been collaborated by the friend. Then this was withdrawn. All of a sudden, here's the problem. People are saying they know what's going on. They give the information, and then they can't be tracked down to come in to file an affidavit, or they change their stories, or they refuse to start talking about it. Many of them moved out of the area immediately afterwards. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, that is one thing that I did hear. Now, Pete is saying that there was statements given that Stephen Smith was planning a fishing trip with a well-known person, but he wouldn't give out any names. Now, when it came to Stephen's little black book, and I'm not speaking about Stephen disparagingly, I have absolutely no judgment for anything this young man did. Seemed like he wanted to be a nursing student to me. He had a little way. He was making money, as some do, to help pay for things. Okay. He had a lifestyle that he was comfortable with and he's entitled to be. He wasn't breaking any laws as far as I could tell. Okay. He did have a book of content of contacts and stuff. Hmm. They do have they do have names that they have checked out from the book. And the fishing trip could have been something like that, Pete, or not. It could have been. So rumor, there are people saying that actually that statement right there indicates Buster Murdaugh, because everybody loved to go out on the boats and to go fishing and all of that. It is true that they knew each other and they were all in the same friend circle. Stephen Smith knew them all, okay, and they knew him. Yep, that's it. That's right. The Beck is talking about the in the chat about the paint chips that were at the bottom of the shoes, the fine ones that they finally pulled up. They could have been from an industrial tool dumpster or a signpost, and them being on the road. How they get to the bottom of his shoes is because they're on the road, exactly. And any part of his shirt that was laying on the road, yes, right. And so that is it. But what they don't find is paint chips from a vehicle from being struck. That's quite evident, okay? Um, yes, this is true. I can't imagine why he would be anywhere without his phone. It's true. What concerns me the most about this case is how they go from what the officers seen on the scene, okay? They're filing their reports, okay? And then what the coroner says. And then the pathologist does the autopsy and has a different view about it. Now, we learned in the Murdaugh trial that some pathologists don't look at crime scene and don't talk to officers about the crime scene. They only read the body. So I'm going to make this statement in defense of the pathologist who did the reporting. She hasn't changed her statement because she doesn't find anything to change her statement for. Okay. She could go and interview the investigators and she could talk to them and she could look at the crime scene. But a lot of them do not want to. They want to only look at the body. And what she said, that was because the body was found on the road and it was a head wound of that type, that it could have been vehicle versus person. but he did die from blunt head trauma. Like he died from the wound to his head, from being hit in the head. Period. Let me just see some more of these questions. You guys got a lot going on in the chat. I'm trying to keep up here. True. A lot of people. One person filed a couple of weeks after Stephen's death and said that he was being threatened by harassing phone calls from the Cayman Islands, and that they were saying that they were going to kill him just like his friend, and that he needed to worry about that. And then he said that he had information that he wanted to give everyone, but then he never did. Okay, so nothing ever really came of that I saw in the reports either. They did report them as harassment calls. I mean, there was a lot of stuff like this going on. People that knew Stephen were getting calls, were calling the officers, giving information that they were hearing rumors and statements, but that's just it. Every time it seems like they went to track down if a name was given about an incident, there was something that interfered with it. Either that person left the area, or they couldn't identify him with the proper last name, or they just decided that they weren't going to talk to them anymore about it. Things were getting crazy. To me, it does look like perhaps people were scared, whether because they were threatened or because they just had the opinion that they would be threatened. Remember, this family that they are associating with this incident had a huge reputation, and of just doing what they wanted, and you didn't go against them. Just that alone, whether they did anything or not, could have kept people from coming forward, could have made a lot of speculation and rumor about them. I'm not saying one way or the other. I do know that Buster, just his timing of putting out the statement concerned me. When they opened up the case again, he just put a statement out right away. Jim Griffin has been speaking on it. He is Buster Murdaugh's family attorney, and he says that he wishes Sandy Smith and the family to get the justice that they deserve and that the murderer is discovered, but he adamantly states that Buster Murdaugh has nothing to do with it. And it's unfair to associate him with it unrealistically. Okay. And, I can kind of feel that way if there's nothing that actually indicates to them. There's nothing in the report that I gave you that shows that Buster Murdaugh was ever interviewed in regards to this, although his name gets mentioned quite a bit. People were just calling in and just talking about it over and over again. Um, the other thing that we have that I am going to actually bring up and read was the one thing that really speaks to me in this is Sandy Smith's letter. First, I want to just show you what, let's see. Nope, it's not it. Here it is. Okay. This was more than a year after her son's death. Remember, her son died on July 8th of 2015. She sends this letter to the FBI, and I'm reading it because this is the kind of statements she received from people. It has a lot of information. Now, it will tell you at the end of it the types of documentation that she sent to help this. Okay. She sends it to the FBI headquarters, and she tells them it's in regards to Stephen Smith's murder investigation. My family is in desperate need of your help. My 19-year-old son, Stephen Nicholas Smith, was murdered on July 8th, 2015, in Hampton County, South Carolina. It has been apparent from the first week of this investigation that authorities are covering up critical evidence, and we no longer know who to trust. That's a very bold and strong statement, and she's felt this way from the start. Stephen's father, my ex-husband, who is now deceased, and I were first told that our son was shot to death after running out of gas in the early hours of the morning and exiting his vehicle. Later that day, We were told it was a hit and run. Finally, investigators determined he was beaten to death. He was attacked so violently that the entire side of his face was rebuilt with putty for his funeral. Hampton investigators asked us at the time to continue to publicly say it was a hit and run. They claimed they didn't want the killer to know they were looking for him. There have been no named suspects. The first call my family received after the murder was from authorities notifying us of Stephen's death. The second came very quickly the same morning from solicitor Randolph Murdaugh. In fact, he called my ex-husband's cell phone as we waited in the police station for a positive identification. He said he heard of the case and was interested in working pro bono as a liaison between the family and investigators. Stephen's father accepted the offer, although we were unsure why Mr. Murdaugh wanted to help us. We also weren't sure how he found out so quickly, even before it was confirmed to be our son. Surprisingly, after just a few interactions, Mr. Murdaugh stopped returning our calls. Within days of our son's death, Stephen's twin sister Stephanie was approached multiple times by peers telling her that Solicitor Murdaugh's nephews were responsible. As a family, it was suspicious to us since he had taken such an immediate interest in the case and then became unreachable so quickly. These suspicions reached new heights weeks later when Stephen's older brother, Chris, was approached at work by a young man he did not know. This person told Chris he was present when Stephen was murdered and witnessed everything firsthand. He said that Solicitor Murdaugh's nephew, Buster, who graduated with Stephen, beat Stephen to death with a baseball bat. He claimed it was because Stephen was gay. Stephen is in fact gay. The witness said they were out smashing mailboxes when they came upon Stephen, and Buster seized the opportunity. The young man told Chris that Buster threatened to kill him if he ever spoke up. This information was given to investigators, but nothing has come of it. In reviewing the copy of the 911 dispatch log I have enclosed, tab A, page 2, I found that the first responding officer, Michael Bridges, arrived on the scene within a minute of 911's dispatch. Even though in Hampton County Sheriff's Office incident report, tab B, he claimed to have driven around for a while trying to find my son's body. The second officer, Jason Eubanks, arrived within 2 minutes. This is suspicious to me because the area where my son was placed is extremely rural. Cops do not patrol that area frequently, and it's not likely an officer, much less two of them, would coincidentally be patrolling there prior to 5 a.m. They had to be in that area at the same time for a reason. I suspect they were there because they already knew Stephen was there, and I suspect the Murdaughs were the ones who told them. The Murdaughs are probably the most prominent family in Hampton County. Stephen had on more than one occasion mentioned to friends and his twin sister that he was involved romantically with someone from a prominent family in the county who was hiding his sexuality. He said that it would shock people to know this person was gay. We suspect this could be the young man Stephen was referring to, though he never named him. At the beginning of the investigation, officers told us that they would not have access to Stephen's text messages for approximately a year. They claimed they would have to send the phone to Apple to override the security features. We found out months later the phone had never been sent to Apple. Often, investigators claimed it was uncertain which department had the phone. They had since produced the phone, which they still have not sent to Apple. This is a year later, but still claim they cannot access it. We feared then and still fear now that they have and will continue to delete critical information from the phone. It has already been over a year, and we have no knowledge of who Stephen interacted with by phone, call, or text prior to his murder. Since the murder, Buster has gotten rid of his old vehicle, which is critical because, according to the witness who approached Chris, they were traveling in Buster's old vehicle that night. It's also critical because Stephen was found 3 miles from his vehicle on the morning of this murder. There was no blood splatter on the crime scene, despite his brutal beating, which makes it clear he was transported to the site. We believe there is DNA in Buster's old vehicle. I think it's important to note that Stephen's wallet was found in his own vehicle and his gas cap was open, further suggesting he did not leave willingly. Tab C. Stephen was very skittish and would never have walked down the road in the dark, and it's not likely he would have opened his car door to accept assistance from someone he did not know, especially alone on a dark country road. He was even known to walk through the woods during the day and to stay out of sight. His autopsy shows his toxicology reports were negative for drugs and alcohol, so I have no reason to believe he would have done something so completely out of character. Since Stephen was placed on the highway, it became a highway patrol investigation. We thought this was beneficial to Stephen, since local authorities obviously have their own agenda. However, it does not help our case at all. This case was mysteriously bounced from investigator to investigator without reasons or notification. It would repeatedly get to a certain point, then the assigned investigators would bow out, perhaps not wanting to take on solicitor Murdaugh. I was approached in September 2015 by a gentleman claiming to know about a criminal case decades ago that was swept under a rug to protect a different member of the Murdaugh family. This came as no surprise to me. I see history repeating itself with my son. No one here is trying to solve our case. Therefore, I contacted Governor Nikki Haley that same month with a plea for help. I wrote her a letter telling her basically word for word the story I have just explained to you. She responded promptly and assigned the case to new investigators. While it appeared to be the answer to our prayers, very little progress was made, and they say they have exhausted their leads. I cannot fathom how that is possible. Our concerns regarding Solicitor Murdaugh and his family have not been investigated despite witness accounts, which include an alleged conversation between a schoolmate of Buster's little brother Paul and school officials. I was told he claimed to have knowledge of the murder and implicated Buster as the murderer. Those school officials were said to have discussed the statement with the student's family, not police. We have heard no further follow up to this situation. Interestingly, according to my source, Paul was transferred from the school to a private school after the alleged statement. We believe Solicitor Murdaugh's influence extends to the pathologist, Dr. Aaron Presnell of MUSC, who performed Stephen's autopsy, Tab D. Though Deputy Coroner Kelly Green and SLED agent Brittany Burke, who were both present for the autopsy, have gone on the record to state that neither made any mention of a car striking Stephen. Dr. Presnell ruled this death a hit and run. She was combative with the Highway Department investigator Todd Proctor regarding her findings when he pointed out that the only trauma was to Stephen's head. He asked how she came to that conclusion, and she said it was because he was found in the road. That alone was her reason. She insisted hit and run, despite the fact that neither his injuries nor the crime scene support that finding. The coroner disagrees with her determination, and it is documented multiple times in the case file that there were no skid marks or vehicle debris consistent with a hit and run at the crime scenes. Please see tabs E, F, and G. Dr. Presnell herself confirmed to investigator Proctor that she found no glass or other fragments on the body to suggest a hit and run. It is simply not possible that a vehicle struck solely his head. Coroner Ernie Washington informed investigator Proctor that Dr. Presnell told him she would change her report to read however he wanted it. Copies of Investigator Proctor's summary notes, which document his discussions with Dr. Presnell and Coroner Washington, are enclosed on tabs F and G. We desperately need your help. This investigation is being deliberately derailed. We need someone to hold the investigators accountable and access Stephen's phone. Solicitor Murdaugh is widely known, and it appears this is playing to his advantage. We need someone who doesn't care about his family name to take this case seriously. In July 2016, I wrote to Attorney General Loretta Lynch in the hopes that she could and would help us, but there has been no response. I have enclosed the key documents I mentioned above, but I can provide copies of all the case documents I have at your request. We also have new information which we discovered in the past few weeks that we feel is critical to this case. However, I no longer trust the investigators here. I am holding it as they await your response. And she gives a phone number and she says thank you for their time. And she did include in those things the 911 dispatch call, the log, the Hampton County Sheriff's Office incident report, which you guys will all get the copies of. SLED crime scene notes, the MUSC autopsy final report, the SCDPS incident report, case file notes from Investigator Proctor, and the South Carolina Highway Department MAIT case notes from Investigator Proctor, which you'll find in the link that I gave you. Let me just see. All right, let's check to see. I'm going to create a link for this one too. If you want the link, let me know. I'm going to put this one in the description, the link for this letter that we just read. It does not have the case documents attached to it, to the files. You'll have to look for those in the MAIT file that I did give you the link to prior. Okay, now let me just take this one down. This is Stephen's twin sister and a very nice picture of Stephen behind that I'm going to put up. We're going to look at this a little bit more while we continue to talk a few more minutes. It took a very long time for the highway patrol to actually indicate if it wasn't a hit and run, that the case had to be turned over to the state Louisiana Department, okay, to SLED. Most of those first interviews for the several months were done by highway patrol who are not as trained in interviewing. I agree, always, I do agree. Even listening to some of the recordings of the first few interviews, many of the questions seemed very leading. And I do agree about that also. Actually, Harold, I can't believe that in their defense, if they're thinking it's a hit and run, I guess they weren't really, with no evidence of the other vehicle, it's almost impossible to figure out a hit and run accident. So I understand why they weren't looking in the phone. They didn't have it listed as a homicide at that point. They did not have it categorized to that until just recently. Like only weeks ago, people, did this actually get opened up as a homicide. And Eric Bland is following on this case, and Richard, those are the attorneys for Sandy Smith, and they have hired the investigator Kinsey. And we all know Dr. Kinsey from the Murdaugh trial, and he's also part of the investigative team now, trying to solve this for the family, who might be indicated. Whether or not there is enough here to bring this to actual trial, to actually have someone indicted on it, because they can't find all the people that were coming forth with names and saying they were there and stuff. They cannot be located back to the investigation. They can't get them. They're not having trouble finding them. I read a couple of reports of them looking for a Patrick Wilson, like actually trying to track down what school he went to and all of this, just to find him. When they finally found him in the school, he wasn't there that day. They went back to the house that he wasn't there either when they found his home, and he just left. He's gone. He went away. He went on a trip, a vacation. He couldn't be contacted. Things got dropped, here and there, because like witnesses were just walking away from it. Anyone who said something at first kind of disappeared. Yeah. Pete says the way that Alex Murdaugh refers to Stephen Smith is quite derogatory. Um, we didn't kill that. Um, they don't have a pleasant way of speaking of people, and they do not like when the Stephen Smith's name is brought up at all. It causes them great consternation. You can see why. I do understand. I wouldn't want to be told I was involved in something, whether hidden or not, but I have no pity for Alex Murdaugh, believe me that. Believe that. I don't like the way he referred to many of the incidences that happened around him. He's very dismissive. The language that is used is awful. Even the grandfather after the boating accident, just saying, "Don't worry about the one who's missing. Like she can go on, like forget about it." Absolutely only worried for themselves, tight knit family, protecting themselves. So I'm not going to waste my time worrying about what people say about them. They surely have plenty taking care of themselves, and they sure have a lot of people helping them. Um, I don't know what's going on with this case. I'll be quite honest. There is a lot that's going on back and forth. Unfortunately, and I understand why Sandy Smith is so active in the case. But you also can understand when the family is so active with giving information and pulling and talking to people and leading all over that it can actually obscure things too. Um, she only wants to think that the Murdaughs are involved. That was evidence in the firing of an attorney, in the fact that she just would like argue with them if they went in any other direction. She needs, like, everybody involved needs to give the names of everybody. The family is quite open about Stephen's activities. There is no shame there for what Stephen was doing or the lifestyle that he had. They're being open about it and giving information. But whenever you try to say that other people may be involved or there's something going on, they kind of shut down on that. And that's, I can understand. They don't want anything. They love Stephen. Okay. They don't want his name dragged through the mud, and I don't blame them. But they do have to give the names and the information. Now, they do have Stephen's book. They do have talked candidly with the sister. The mother has tried. Okay. Um, there's a very interesting aspect of this is that supposedly during the investigation, during the trial, and interviews that were going on and testimony that was given in the Alex Murdaugh murder trial of Maggie and Paul, somehow or other, some information came forward that triggered the reopening of the case. Now, whether that was the pressure of everyone talking about it so much and that everything started to look bad and the original documentation does not match the pathologist report and that it does look shady, and finally there was pressure. There was pressure from somewhere to open it up, or as has been rumored and stated, there was additional information provided that was credible. That is what got it back going. But for whatever reason, the investigation, and like I said, it's clearly only an investigation this time, but it's been recategorized. It's an open homicide, not a hit and run. It's not solved. There are also other names. Yes, there's lots of names in the area linked. Stephen was very popular. He's a gregarious, well-liked person. Yeah. They said he kept to himself with his lifestyle and all, but yeah, that quote from Morgan, and Morgan is Paul's girlfriend, correct? Yeah, yeah. I see it. Mm. I just see that this is such a it's emotional. It is quite emotional to read the reports and to read a lot of what was said. The There's people coming out from all over. Okay, um, this gentleman Bickard, who says that he was like so prominently, in a relationship with Stephen. Um, I don't know. There's supposedly all the documentation of their relationship. Things were being deleted because things had gotten serious. Um, you know, mm. He's saying that there was evidence of Stephen doing escort things and things like that, which really upset the family because they don't have that. Um, Burkhardt claims that the sister has Stephen's iPad and that all the evidence would be on there. But as the interview that they had with him progressed, everything kind of fell apart. He couldn't recall dates or times. He said he was so intimately involved with a person that he couldn't even say like where they did this or where they did that or how they met or anything like that. Um, he did put evidence, it does appear that he may be trying to insert himself into the situation, because he also gave testimony that said that Stephen had mentioned a couple of guys in a pickup truck, two rednecks who had harassed him at Snyder's Crossroads, and gave like direct roads and everything involved. But he couldn't remember dates that he and Stephen were together or things like that or times. He couldn't give information. He had no pictures or anything of that of that nature. So it does look as if this person who I believe when you look at the Fitz News reporting, which has done a lot of reporting on Stephen, um, let me just give you their. Here's a link to their archive on it. They've been doing a lot. They've interviewed quite a few people, talked to people and about it. Every time there's a statement released, the SLED released a statement about opening it. Um, in the interest of accuracy, understanding, and the continued mission of seeking justice is how that statement started for SLED. Um, uh, Mark Keel, who is the head of SLED, the state law enforcement division, confirmed that his agency was treating the death of Stephen Smith now as a homicide. After that, they put out a formal statement. They're going to be devoting additional resources to solving the case. They did, release that statement and considered it a high-profile murder investigation because of all the names that are mentioned. Um, they say that it was initially misclassified as a vehicular hit and run, based on the findings of the pathologist, Erin Presnell. Okay. Um, she's from the Medical University of South Carolina, just like everyone that we've heard testimony from. Uh, Smith's case is international attention after it's been featured in a Netflix documentary, Murdaugh Murders, a Southern Scandal. It was also in Low Country for HBO. Every Murdaugh murder documentary brings up Stephen Smith and/or the Satterfields. It's hard not to, with everything going on. I remember first looking into all of the financial claims that were coming out on Alex Murdaugh at the time, in all of the stuff that they were talking about, the roadside incident where he shot himself in the head after the paid friend, Curtis Smith, would not. Um, it, it was wild. And all the way back then, they were linking Stephen Smith's case from 2015 as unsolved and involving the Murdaughs in some way. Whether or not it was just because they were there at the time as head solicitor and involved in the crime, and they were there with the highway patrol somewhere on the scene, just because their son, Alex's sons knew the victim. They were just getting tied to it immediately and have been consistently from the start. Okay. All right. Now, SLED is said to have opened an investigation into the Smith death after the slayings of Maggie and Paul, which was in 2021. But now they've actually reclassified his death as a homicide. And that came forward just recently on the 22nd of March. Now, we know the family has been fundraising to have Stephen's body exhumed, and I do believe that they reached their goal and they have been petitioning for it. And Fit News, and I do agree always, I did see just recently that Fit News had said that the exhumation could happen within the next few weeks. Like we will see more reporting. They the family is petitioning the investigators and the court, the system to definitely have an outside autopsy performed. Um, at this late date, I don't know what they're going to be able to determine from that. Probably just much of the same about the head trauma, I'm sure can be confirmed. Well, what else that they will be able to discover, we'll find out. But the family believes that they're not getting the straight story. It is very evident that the family now doubts all of the investigation. They don't know who to trust, as you can see. I mean, they weren't even trustful of them years ago. And now more and more delays have happened and more has gone on in regards to information not being followed up and things not being done. There doesn't seem to be a lot of trust here. Okay. They said that they opened up the investigation based upon information gathered during the course of the double murder investigation of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh. They did not specify what that information was that led them to open up the investigation back in 2021. Okay. Of course, the Smith family has been waiting forever on this, and that's what they say. Stephen has always been put on a back burner. It's like nobody's looking for answers. Stephen has no justice. That's a quote from Sandy Smith. Now, Sandy Smith just deserves to know what happened to her son. So does all his friends and family. And you know what? Even the Murdaughs deserve to know what actually happened. So if they're not involved, it can be put to rest. Huh? Maybe. And if they are involved, whoever it is, the rest of the family can be left in peace. We can just put it all to rest, let the guilty parties be taken care of, and let the rest of the families on all sides move forward. It's horrible that this has been taking so long, you know. Um, what I would recommend is before to follow the investigation. Some of the best reporting, I'd have to say, is coming out from Fitz News because they're local. They do have connections within the community that does help them with law enforcement and getting documents and etc. To also look at the MAIT full documentation of the incident, the drawings and stuff. To look at that, and if you're not too squeamish, there are from the Daily Mail and a few other places have released the pictures from the scene. They do blur out his face and stuff. One thing that I noticed is that there's no statement of his face being that badly beaten in from the offices that I saw, but then she's saying that it had to be reconstructed by Putty for for the funeral services. And I do believe, recalling in an interview, that his sister Stephanie had said that she wanted an open casket for Stephen. And I'm sure that they did have to reconstruct for the head wound in that case. But this is where the rumors of him being so badly beaten came from, because of the reconstruction for the funeral services there, which would have had to have been done even if it's shown only the head wound. I'm sure you can understand. So there's like a lot of speculation back and forth. I have seen no photographs or statements of a severe beating, only a hit to the head. That I have seen reported repeatedly in all of the documentation from the officers. But like Sandy, I can't say that everything is totally copacetic with that reporting. I want to believe it is, because I want to believe that officers are going to write down what they see and what they do. I think if there was any obstruction or any coercion of any nature, I think it was just general pushing, like nothing to see here. Let's just move on, based on the hit and run. Um, I'm not saying there's not shady stuff going on. I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's pressure. I'm sure just because of all the people involved, there's a hell of a lot of pressure on a hell of a lot of people. And I'm sure that that affected how people moved forward in their in looking at this case. There was one kid. Mm. Yep. Yeah, always. They said they wanted to see what was done to him. They wanted to present the story straight out. Yep. Yeah. She said it was important. She wanted that open casket, and they did. Okay. All right, I'm going to take a couple of more questions if you have any. But like I said, I do recommend that link. You definitely go for, if you can. Oh, let me just do this again. Let me just drop the link again for the MAIT, the South Carolina Highway Patrol's actual multidisciplinary accident investigation team report, 110 pages, okay, of the actual real deal that they got going on there, okay? All right. And the other one that I listed for you was the Fit News, which has multiple articles on there. They did interview Burkhart. They did interview um the sister, several people involved over and over again with the case. They report everything that comes out of officially from SLED, officially from the trial, all of the stuff that may and may not have been said. They went back pretty far. They've been covering it all along. So I just want to give you a picture of a happier time to end on while we're talking here. I do believe that in these kind of cases, investigations, especially the unsolved, we always have to keep the victim in mind. We want justice for the victim and the families, okay? And at the same time, we have to try to balance it with not coming across people or all speculation on what we think might happen, damaging others before there is actually a criminal trial to actually put on them, okay? Um, I just I feel for the parents. I feel for the sister, the loss of her brother. Um, Obviously Stephen was way too young, and he did have a future ahead of him. Wanted to be a nurse, going to contributing member of society. Um, he does. They deserve answers, and I just want to see that, just like everybody else. So I'm going to be following it. I'm not so sure it's going to be tied as Murdaugh. I'm not going to list this. I'm going to list this in true crime on its own for one reason in particular. I think Stephen Smith deserves justice outside of the taint of the Murdaugh name. Does that sound fair? I think Stephen deserves it on his own, whether or not they had anything to do with it. So we're going to follow it all the way through, whether we find out it has anything to do with the Murdaugh family or not. It's just I'm going to list it separately as justice for Stephen. Okay. And if it does end up to be something to do with the Murdaughs, we'll stick it over there where it belongs. But for now, Stephen deserves justice on his own. And we want to keep it open and not think so narrow mindedly that the only one involved are the Murdaughs. We have to look at it clearly that there were a lot more people in Stephen's lives that weren't actually honorable or of the best nature anyway. There were many people that may have had issues with him. He was young. He was gorgeously beautiful. He was a beautiful boy, a beautiful one. Okay. And there was many of people that may be making assignments and thinking of him in certain ways. And he just didn't want to settle down. He was free. He wanted to go to school. He kept parts of his private life separately and quietly, like we all do. Okay. All I'm saying is nothing against Stephen. Only that there's more people involved in the Murdaughs, and I want to be clear. If they're involved, we want to see them pay, but also to keep our eyes open for everything else that will be coming forward. We can't be so narrow-minded to think they're the only ones to it. That's not in sympathy for them or anything like that. It's just in clarity of the case, and so that we actually look at everything that we're looking at and we don't miss any of the small things. Okay. Yes, we do. We need it for the family. It has been. You know what? I agree, Pete. This is the sad part here. I'm sure reopening the case will stall unless somebody comes forward. And it has been 8 years. It has. All those original witnesses giving those statements, where are they? They need to, the case is open now. They need to come forward. Because if they don't, there's nearly nowhere for this to go, is there? If credible people, not just credible, but if anyone doesn't just come forward with credible evidence about anything, if we can't actually lead back to what actually happened and speak to the people involved at the time, I don't know how they can. And finding people 8 years later, immediately after they suspiciously started leaving, once people were getting talked to. And you'll read that in the 110 pages. You'll see that over and over again, that they just can't get a hold of people. And now I don't know if they're only half trying or what. I can't speculate. I'm going to assume they weren't. I'm going to assume it's impossible for even the Murdaughs to taint every single officer in SLED or the Highway Patrol or any other organization. I'm going to just say it's impossible to get to them all. Okay, I don't want to even think that that is what happened. I think that people were, based on who it was, into pressure. It's a situation nobody wants to think about something like this happening. Nobody wants to be on the other end of it either. And if threats are being made, or even the assumption of threats, or just, it seems to be from all the documentaries, I do get this opinion. I do get the impression, rather, that it was common to feel that anything to do with that family came with a lot of pressure, like, just don't say a word, just don't get involved. Like, you don't want to be messing with that family. That seems to be the impression that comes out in every single documentary and report. Mhm. I do agree always. Eric Bland is tenacious as an attorney. He's awesome in reporting what they're doing and everything. I agree. I definitely agree. They're not going to let it go. Neither is Mark Tinsley in regards to Mallory Beach. Okay. And if they reopen the Satterfield case, well, I just think we're going to end up talking about this family for a really long time. Okay. Mm. All right. A couple more. Dr. Kinsley. Whoops. Wait a minute. What am I looking at here? Dr. Kinsley has made it very clear that he will be going into this unbiased and will only let the evidence in the crime scene direct him to his conclusion. Yep, he's a professional. He trains everyone in regards to how to look at stuff. But remember, we don't have a crime scene. We only have the documentation from this report back in 2015 and ongoing for quite a while, like months. The interviews. We have the names of who they interviewed and all. They can try to backtrack into a lot of it. But as far as physical evidence for Dr. Kinsey, there's really not going to be a lot there. If the body gets exhumed, that's going to add to it. But we're going to hope that all it does is come forward with, again, a more accurate cause of death. Oh, but again, how are they going to say hit and run? You know, when with no other evidence to say it. I mean, the officers immediately on the scene said they did not think so, and they're the ones trained to know whether what they're looking at. We're talking highway patrol here. I think they know what a hit and run looks like. I think they know what they would normally see. Don't you? I mean, that's just common sense, right? Yeah. Hey, Mousy, I didn't see you come in, but it's good to see you here. Hmm. This is a very good question, and I would have to leave this up to everyone that's looking at it. But Harold asks, given recent events, do the remaining Murdaughs still hold the same power, intimidation, influence they once did? Might more people speak out now? As we saw in the trial, it would appear yes. Alex Murdaugh's own best friend testified against him based on what he did to him. His family didn't, some of his associates, but his ex-partners, people that had to deal with him, people that dealt with him for 23 years. They spoke out about what they saw and what they heard and suspicions they had. So if people that close did it, I'd say there's a good chance that maybe the rest of the public is feeling a little braver than they did. And in that hope, along with what Pete said about it being 8 years and kind of hard, on that note, because with Alex being convicted of the murders, perhaps there is a little bit of like a little bit there that they feel a little braver, that they feel that people will take what they're saying seriously and not just poo poo and throw it under the rug. So we can only hope that those with the information have the strength and the courage to come forward and that the system will protect them for doing the right thing. This is what I hope every day. Every day. That's what I want. I want the system to protect them for telling the truth, whatever the truth is. And I want the families to get peace and be able to accept the truth, whatever the truth is, and finally be able to put this to rest. I do. It must be horrible to be going through this all these years. Oh. Crazy Kate said, I think the cops failed to investigate correctly, which allowed evidence to disappear. Dumping a body on a dark back road is a good way to cover up a murder. Yeah, it is. Hey, Mippet. Mhm. I would also like to just say that all of you that are going through really horrible weather right now, it's scary, and I'm thinking about many of you. So many of you. I saw Charlie in the chat, and Anna's mentioning it. A couple of others. I hope everything's going to be okay. I hope it passes. Um, that's all I can actually say about it. I am way too far away to just take you out of the situation, which I surely wish I could. Um, well, definitely. Mm. Yes, Hakeem Pickney. Yes, that name, the name of Wilson, Patrick Wilson. Bramberg has been out speaking regarding him. Yeah, I saw all of this always. But the thing is that they have to actually speak to the people. I mean, anyone can say any, like, let's be honest here. Anyone can say anything about they heard so and so did this. They heard so and so said this. They heard so and so was here or there or did this or did that. None of that is evidence. Mm-mm. It's not admissible. It can lead you to a direction to investigate. It can lead you to those people to talk to. But unless it's difficult, unless you got an eyewitness of them actually doing it. Okay, not they heard or this, and that's the problem with this case. There's a lot of that, a lot of that. Okay, it's very, very difficult. It is. Okay. Yeah, and it isn't because of the names involved, because of everything. Um, it is. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for everybody involved, and like I said, I really feel for the family because they're surrounded by the gossip and everybody trying to help and telling them all this stuff. Um, Really, nothing else, just blunt false trauma to the head only. Nothing else broken or damaged from what I read. Um, Always I'd have to see the actual report. It was redacted. So what I saw was so redacted. I never saw the dislocated shoulder in the broken ribs in regards to Stephen Smith on there. Um, but I'll double check again. But I have to actually see that in black and white. Because that's not what the other investigative reports are saying. Now, I understand that they didn't do the autopsy, so I want to see the actual black and white autopsy on there and go over it with a fine tooth comb. The same. Mm. Okay. So on that, if there's not any more questions, I am going to look for to see if I can actually find the autopsy report. Someone said it was out there in black and white unredacted, but I don't believe it would be unredacted. I don't know why. You got to remember it's an active investigation now. So a lot of things may or may not be available, but because it's so old, there were things leaked like prior all over the place. All I ask is that as we find things, we keep in mind the victim, we keep in mind their family, and we try not to do things too haphazardly to cause them any more pain than they're already in. And at the same time, regardless of how we feel about people being involved, we keep it that we keep it so that we do not try to put too much on people that we don't actually sure about. Okay, because that also affects lives detrimentally. And yes, some of them may deserve it. And I hear you, and you're going to push back on me, and I hear you. But let's use a little common sense and let's look like we should at just everything that's presented. Yes, always I realize that people are talking about it, but you know me, I'm just gonna be that naggy little pain in the butt until I see it in black and white. I'm not gonna believe it because they've also said there's also been a lot of other things said, and until I see it black and white in a report that comes from credible, and I think that they will actually see evidence of that when they exhume the body and they do their own autopsy. We will actually see those the results. Those fracture lines will still be there. The dislocation of the shoulder could still be evident. Okay. Yeah. So or the presence of it. So like I'm hoping that there will be some collaborating evidence for the statements that have been made. And that would clear it up for me. And then I'll be putting it in the fact column over here in the evidence part that we're all getting together. Okay. Um all right, on that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for giving me some time on a Friday night to go about this. This is going into the active file. We are going to be following it, so feel free to ask questions on the back of videos, comments in DMs. If you're in the Discord, there's a room set up for when there are really interesting videos being done, articles being written, or end of information being released right from the investigation. We'll be tracking it as best that we can. I'll put links to some pertinent articles. Like I said, Fit News has a pretty good trail of following it all along. If you want to go there, they have the most comprehensive. Mandy Matney also has reported on it because it was related to the Murdaugh murders, which she was covering. She does a podcast. She's got information on there also. Fit News is news. I will say, I do admire their attitude right now. They're going to take this to whichever way it goes, whether it goes Murdaugh or not. And I appreciate that they keep reminding people that it could go either way and that we don't know who's involved. And it could be somebody outside of the Murdaugh circle. Absolutely. They're not saying it is, they're just saying it could be. And that everybody has to be prepared, as I've been saying, for it to be something different than what we think because everything's not clear yet. Okay, this is an investigation. It's ongoing. We need to look at evidence. We need to see what's coming out. Unfortunately, we're going to hope that they keep digging. We're going to hope that people come forward with more leads and in whether they saw something, whether they know something, and the actual people involved can be actually interviewed, and the investigation can go forward unheeded. With Alex being in jail, like you said, I think the climate has changed a little bit. I think the fear may have subsided over the years. Who knows? But it's going to be difficult for them to go back and find everybody that came forward. But they do have great documentation of who did. They wrote down every name. They did. They wrote this all down from what I see in the 110 pages. They got a lot to relook at. Okay, they've got the 911 calls. When you call and give information to a police, it's recorded. They have all this. They just have to get to it, and it's tedious and time consuming. But there are people that are actively searching for the answers. The Bland team, for one, Kinsey for another, the family themselves, and the agents involved. The investigation is now open by SLED, and I don't think that they want their name any more tarnished than what a public trial tried to do. I think that they'll be moving forward trying to find some answers here. Okay. And hopefully for the family, it stays open and they just keep working at it. Okay. Well, on that, I will see you all tomorrow night. We will be doing the what a fuckery, and it's April Fools. We got a lot of fools to talk about, actually. There's some stuff that's been going on, a lot of stuff that's been going on. And so I hope to see you all there. We'll let our hair down a little bit, not so serious, and cover some of the things that have been going on the social medias and the news reporting on these famous people who are just driving us crazy with their shenanigans. On that, I hope you're all well. Those of you in the weather area that is really volatile right now, I hope that you are protected, you stay tight, and I hope to be speaking to you soon, all of you, and that you are safe. Remember, everyone, keep really, really good thoughts for everyone to have a really great weekend, at least the best that we can. All right, everyone, have a right. Thank you all for being here. Like I said, don't forget to like, share, comment. You got questions, I want to hear from you. Hit the back of those videos, and let's talk again soon, okay? All right. On that, y'all have a great night. Bye.